Hello and welcome to Take a Beat. My name is Tirza and I'm the digital pastor here at IES. Take a Beat is an IES podcast where we invite you to take a little break, chat, and talk about things that matter, only to launch back on the beat. And so, friends, I work with an amazing team here who help us with producing this whole podcast. We have Izzy and we have Hillary and we have Michelle and we have Chris. And am I missing anyone? I don't think so. Well, we also have the support of like Defa and Andreas. And so we had this conversation the last time we had recording, and I like gadgets. So I think it's not just that I look for gadgets, but they look for me. All of the ads are placed in such a way that I would get all of the gadgets. And so they were taking a look at, I don't even remember, something that I had to clean my laptop, and they made this statement. So they said, Tirza has all of the things that are useful but not important. And the actual phrase is berguna tapi nggak penting. And so we had a good laugh because it's true. I have all of these different gadgets. Actually, they just commented on my little straw stopper. They're like, oh, it's useful but really not important. And so that's like that was the phrase of that day. And I came home and I thought about it, and I thought that it was the funniest thing ever. And then I realized, there's a lesson in this. And there might be a lesson that I can learn from this. This whole idea of having things that are useful but not important. And so sometimes I realize that in my life, I have not only gadgets that are useful but not important, but there are things in my life that is in my life, and it's useful and it's good, but on the priority list, it is not important. But it does add up. And so because I like collecting all of these gadgets, there's just a lot of them and I don't know where to put them. And so my apartment, I'm not a hoarder, but my apartment sometimes just need a big spring cleaning and me getting rid of things that are there, useful, but not important. And so I was reflecting on this thanks to this podcast team. And I was thinking about my life. What are some of the things in my life, in my heart, that are useful or good? And in all, like on paper, it's great, but they're not important. And I realize there's a lot of things. There are different habits or different quirks or different thoughts that are useful, but then not important. And so I started on this little journey of asking myself, okay, what's important? It's sort of, I don't watch Marie Kondo because I felt like I would be challenged and I would be, the Holy Spirit will be convicting me through Marie Kondo, so I don't. But then I know the premise is, you sort through the things in your life. If it doesn't bring you joy, you discard it or you throw it away. And so I was going through this process of, okay, it's useful, but is it important? And so I took some time, and it's not really like I sit down and just think about all of the things in my life, but I just going through life and going through some of the things that I was doing or habits or different things. Like, for example, I am a night owl, and I sometimes just schedule my stuff really, really late at nights. And then the impact of that is in the mornings, I just am not a human being. I am like a zombie. And I was like, okay, for me, it's good to be working at night and working all the way till 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. But then I'm like, I am not a gracious, functioning human being at 8 when I have to start my day. And so I'm trying to sleep earlier, and by the grace of God, it is helping. But I'm going through some of these things in my life, and it could be sleep, it could be different habits, it could be thoughts, the books that I read, or the music that I listen to, and really think about, okay, this is good, or this is useful to an extent, but is it important? And so the question then becomes, what is important? Right? And the world says, and a lot of people say, well, you determine what's important. And so what is important to you? But I think, yes, to an extent, that's like we're the ones who figure out our list of priorities. But when we are children of God and we say that we want to follow Jesus, our priorities get kind of offered to the Lord. So we don't get to be the one saying, this is a priority, this is not. God does. And we get to follow. And trust me, it is something that is difficult. It's difficult to learn how to submit. And so one of the verses that came up in my reading this week is Proverbs 3, verses 1 through 10. And some of you know this by heart. It's one of those passages, or even like the verse 5 is one that you memorize in kids' church, or you memorize when you were growing up, and yeah, absolutely. But then sometimes we just need to revisit some of these well-known verses or well-known passages from the Bible and really take a second look or a third look. And here, actually, I was reading through the Message version, and for verse 6, it says, in all your ways, submit to the Lord. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Listen to God's voice in everything you do. And so God's voice is the voice that gets to determine what's a priority in our lives. And so that it's the filter isn't, what is the thing that works for me when we're trying to filter and sort through the clutter in our lives. But the question is always, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? Is this important? Like, where is this on your priority list, Lord? And so listen to God's voice, and God's voice is in the scriptures. God's voice is there when we spend time with the Lord. And so don't try, and this is me talking to myself. And this is me telling you so that you would be able to keep me accountable as well. Because if it's out there, right? So don't try to figure out everything on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do. And then in Matthew 16 or 17? Oh, 16. Matthew 16, this is actually one of those passages in the Bible. There were those stories in the Bible that always like kind of hit me different. Jesus was with his disciples, and you'd think that they have like this really close relationship, but then like Jesus was saying, "Oh, I am going to be crucified," or like one form of that. And so he was saying that to his disciples, and then Peter was like, "No, Lord, don't say that. Don't you ever even think about that." This is my paraphrase, okay? And then Jesus, and this is one of those things where like Jesus rebuked Peter, and Jesus actually said like, "Oh, get thee," this is the King James version, "Get thee behind me, Satan." And I was like, oh, sorry, what? Jesus just called Peter Satan. What? But then like I was rereading this story, this passage from Matthew, and the reason why Jesus rebuked Peter wasn't because Peter like was irredeemable and just have done the worst thing ever. No, it's because Peter didn't get Jesus's priority. Peter didn't get Jesus's purpose. And so in every key decision that we take, we must ask ourselves whether we have in mind the concerns of the Lord, or if we have in mind just our human concerns. And our concerns are good, but it's not the most important. What Jesus says is the heart of his mission is sacrificing himself. That was the purpose he came to earth, was to die on the cross. And that was difficult for him. And then there's Peter telling him, don't say that. You're not going to do that. And that was great, but it has the potential of distracting Jesus from that purpose that he had coming to earth. In verse 24 to 26, again, this is the Message version just because it's a little bit more relaxed. It says this: "Anyone who intends to come with me," Jesus, "has to let me lead." And so following Jesus and surrendering is how we find our purpose, how we find what's important, how we find our priority. And so that's something that I've been thinking about. What does it look like to surrender to God? What does it look like to listen to God's voice? And keep the things of the Lord as a priority. So let me ask you this, because I'm still working through this. This is still very fresh in my heart and my mind. But let me ask you this: what is it that God is leading you to do? And has that been a little bit cluttered because there are other things in your life that you kind of need to not get rid of, but place in different ways? And what is the purpose that God has put in your life? And that brings us to a completely different conversation, right? What is the purpose of life? And every single organism, every single person throughout history has been asking this question: what is our purpose? What is the purpose of life? And in Jesus, for people who follow Jesus, for people who are even just thinking about or attempting to follow Jesus, purpose doesn't come from us. Purpose comes from Jesus. And so that's something that I kind of want to put out there and challenge you to think about. Marie Kondo the living daylights out of your life and figure out what is a priority. Is this is this useful and not important, or is this useful and important? And let's kind of sort out our life. This is not spring cleaning. This is like summer cleaning, but school's getting out or school's out. And so we have a little bit of time to reorganize our lives, reorganize our thoughts, reorganize our habits. We don't have to wait until the first of the year and do a whole New Year's resolution. We can start cleaning up our priorities right now. And so I invite you to ask this question: what's important? Is it useful and important? Or is it useful and not important? And so it can be stored or revisited a little bit later. And so, friends, that's kind of my thought that I wanted to share with you. And so if you have any thoughts, if you have any ideas, if you have any stories that you want to share, we welcome them. So we have an email, takeabeat@ies.online, or you can DM us at ies.online on Instagram, or comment on YouTube. Get a hold of us. We're out there. And so share your stories, share your questions, share ideas for Take a Beat. We would love to hear from you. Well, friends, don't miss a beat. We'll see you next week on Take a Beat.